Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly through dew-soaked grass, boots muffled, eyes fixed on torchlight glimmering far ahead. The stone walls of the enemy's city loom dark and cold, stretching into a velvet sky thick with stars. You hold your breath as an owl hoots above. The night smells like wet wool and nerves. Behind you, rows of soldiers march in tired silence, their armor groaning with each step. Your stomach grumbles, again, but there's no time for dried turnips now. You're here to surround a city and wait, probably for months. Welcome to the soothingly slow agony of medieval siege warfare. You're not swinging swords yet, you're mostly waiting, watching, digging, and sometimes vomiting. It's not fast, it's not glorious, and you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice as your siege army arrives is how quiet the city is. No clashing weapons, no trumpet blasts. Just a giant stone huddle of buildings pretending you don't exist. That'll change. But not yet. You set up camp just beyond arrow range. Tents go up, canvas patches flapping in the wind, reeking of mildew. The ground is uneven and smells faintly of manure. You unpack your pack, dry bread, salted fish, and a linen shirt that hasn't been cleaned since Lent. In the distance, you hear a bell tolling from inside the city. Not for you, just the usual prayers or curfew. But it reminds you, the people in there are going to bed in real beds tonight, probably with hot stew. You're lying in a mud puddle with your helmet as a pillow. By morning, there's order, lines of tents, guard shifts, cooking fires. Everyone's finding their job in the siege ecosystem. Some will dig trenches. Others will fetch water. A lucky few will stand around pretending they're important while discussing logistics and scratching at their lice. You trudge toward the front edge of camp where captains sketch diagrams in the dirt with sticks. They argue over how far your forces should extend. Some prefer a full encirclement, others argue for a concentrated assault on the weakest wall. Historians still argue whether medieval commanders were tactically brilliant or just lucky loudmouths with swords. You're assigned to the eastern perimeter. Your job for today, carry sharpened stakes and drive them into the ground at an angle. Anti-cavalry defenses. You have blisters by mid-morning. By lunch, you've developed a deep philosophical hatred of pointy wood. Evenings around the camp are strange. Everyone smells. There's a kind of festival energy, but with less dancing and more trench foot. Someone sings a tune about a goose stealing bread from a bishop. You don't laugh, but someone else nearly chokes on salted pork from laughing too hard. You make a note, don't die like that. At night, the stars are still clear. You wrap your cloak tight and listen to a nearby group whispering ghost stories about ruined castles and headless knights. A donkey screams somewhere behind the latrines. You never find out why. A few days in, the enemy finally acknowledges you. Arrows whistle past your outer trenches. One sticks in the dirt near your foot. The fletching is bright red. A warning shot, or someone just bad at aiming. You start to notice the rhythms of a siege. Morning, roll call, ration distribution, latrine maintenance. Midday, patrols, supply checks, someone vomiting in a bush from drinking canal water. Evening, bread, boredom, and blisters. There's something surreal about knowing you're both at war and doing nothing. The actual act of taking a city might be weeks or even months away. But here you are, sharpening stakes, watching the walls, and wondering if the goat stew will ever stop smelling like socks. You hear rumors, the defenders have trebuchets. You've seen nothing yet, but still, someone says they spotted one through a spyglass. Someone else says the defenders pour boiling sand on attackers. Someone else says they throw beehives. You laugh. Then you realize they're not joking. By the end of week 1, your tent mate has invented a dice game involving bones and pebbles. You've lost 3 pieces of bread playing it. Worth it. Another man claims to have seen movement on the outer parapets. A woman in red, waving a flag. No one else saw it. He gets put on night watch, possibly as punishment, possibly because no one else wants it. You start dreaming about the walls. About climbing them. About falling. About cities with doors that open instead of cities you have to starve into submission. When you wake up, it's to the soft clink of metal and the scraping of wooden wheels dragging bundles of logs for some siege engine to be built. Every few days, someone dies. Not in battle. From disease. Or a wound that never healed. Or a cooking accident involving too much wine and a broken spit. It's quiet. It's slow. It feels like the siege is taking you all in ways you didn't expect. And yet, every morning, you wake up to do it all again. Because the walls haven't fallen yet. Because orders haven't changed. Because someone has to stand in the mud, stare at stone, and wait. Eventually, you realize, the city isn't just behind those walls. It's watching you too. You wake before sunrise to the sound of someone coughing their lungs out 2 tents over. It's a wet, hacking sound that nobody bothers to check on anymore. By now, the sickness is part of the background noise, like the wind snapping the banners or the buzz of flies over breakfast. Your feet slide into cold, damp boots. You slept fully clothed again, because it's easier than freezing in your underwear. A thin film of frost lines your blanket. The fire's out. You can still feel the ghost of heat in the ashes, but that's about all the comfort you're getting this morning. Around you, camp slowly stirs awake. Grumbling voices, groggy curses, the occasional shouted name as someone realizes their mule wandered off during the night. You stretch and head toward the latrines, which is both necessary and traumatic. It's just a trench. A very full trench. With planks balanced dangerously over the top. And it smells like defeat. Welcome to siege camp life. If you thought the action was outside the city walls, think again. The real war. It's in here. Among the tents, the fleas, and the daily struggle to not die of absolute boredom or mild dysentery. You eat a breakfast that tastes like regret. A lump of barley porridge, slightly burned and definitely cold. Someone pours a thin brew of something they claim is ale. It might actually be river water with ambition. You sit around a fireless fire pit with a few others. Nobody talks much. Someone sneezes, and everyone subtly leans away. You scratch your leg absently and wonder if the itch is from the wool or from the lice. Spoiler, it's always the lice. A messenger trudges by with a scroll tucked into his belt. He trips on a tent rope and swears quietly. Nobody helps him up, but someone tosses him an apple. He takes a bite and keeps walking. That's the energy here, half-hearted kindness and full-throated apathy. Your duties today are glamorous. Collecting wood from the thinning forest nearby and hauling water from a shallow stream that's starting to taste like the inside of a boot. You slosh your buckets past the command tent, where someone's arguing about logistics and oat supply. Historians still argue whether supply lines were truly the linchpin of siege success or just something commanders complained about while waiting for reinforcements. At the edge of camp, a man is shaving another's head with a knife. Delousing. You'll be next. The knife looks dull. The man doing the shaving looks bored enough to draw blood accidentally. You decide to keep your helmet on a few more days. A few soldiers are building a crude shower setup using barrels and gravity. It works exactly once before the barrels collapse and flood the nearby tents. Everyone claps sarcastically. Someone starts a slow chant, "Dry feet. Dry feet," and is promptly pelted with damp socks. There's a latrine detail today, and you're lucky enough to miss it. Some poor souls are tasked with digging a new trench and filling in the old one. It's as awful as it sounds. You hear a rumor that one of them found a skull down there. Could be ancient. Could be last week. No one investigates. Meals are predictable: salted meat, hard bread, and occasionally dried peas so hard you could use them as sling ammo. If you're lucky, someone in your unit has something stashed: an onion, a garlic clove, a flask of actual wine instead of vinegar pretending to be wine. Occasionally, someone gets ambitious and tries to cook something real. A stew. Maybe a roast. It usually ends with food poisoning or something catching fire. But for 5 minutes, the smell is enough to make you remember your childhood, or at least a tavern that didn't serve everything with maggots. Boredom becomes your closest companion. You carve things into wood: faces, symbols, occasionally rude drawings. You listen to stories. Some true, most not. A knight claims he once knocked down a castle gate with his shoulder. You nod politely. There are card games, dice games, contests involving rocks and who can throw them the farthest. One man claims he's training a squirrel to steal from the enemy camp. Everyone laughs. Then he shows you the squirrel. It's missing a foot but seems extremely determined. A scribe sets up near the center of camp. He'll write letters for coin. People line up. Most messages are simple: I'm alive. I miss you. Sell the cow and marry a baker if I don't come back. One guy dictates a long poem to his horse. Nobody questions it. Night falls early. Fires are strictly controlled: too much smoke can give away your position. So you gather around small, smothered embers, cloaks pulled tight, breath fogging in the cold. The camp stinks. Smoke, sweat, rotting food, and whatever that is behind the cook's tent. You've stopped trying to identify smells. You just try to sleep. But it's hard. Snores come from every direction. Someone coughs non-stop. Another person mutters in his sleep, something about bells and burning towers. You press your helmet over your ears and try to dream about something other than digging latrines or counting rats. Oh, right. Rats. They're everywhere. They like tents. And boots. And anything that might be remotely edible. You've started keeping your bread inside your shirt while you sleep. You tell yourself this is normal behavior. In the distance, you hear the faint strum of a lute. Someone's playing badly, but the sound cuts through the night air in a weirdly soothing way. You wonder how they smuggled it into camp. You wonder if they'll let you try a song tomorrow. You wonder if it'll be a good day or just another long shuffle of trench digging and cold meat. You drift off finally, wrapped in a cloak that smells like wet dog and regret. Tomorrow will be exactly the same. Probably worse. But for now, the city is still standing, and you're still here. You wake up with mud in your ear. Not next to your ear. In your ear. Somehow, during the night, your head slid off the rolled-up jerkin you were using as a pillow and directly into the edge of a rain-soaked puddle. You blink up at the gray dawn sky and accept your fate with the quiet resignation of someone who has already eaten rat-contaminated biscuits this week. Rain. Again. Everything is soggy: your boots, your blanket, your optimism. You rise slowly, trying not to feel your knees pop like dry twigs, and shuffle out of your tent. A rooster crows somewhere in the distance, probably perched on a wagon wheel or someone's broken dignity. Today, you're digging. You've been digging all week, and now you're digging again, only this time it's defensive trenches, which, ironically, are designed to help you attack. Siege warfare is nothing if not deeply contradictory. So you grab a shovel. Not a proper iron-headed one either, just a stick with a flat blade lashed to it. Feels like it could break if you look at it wrong. You join a line of equally grumpy soldiers, most of them ankle-deep in mud, bent over like weary ants. You pick a spot and start scooping dirt. Wet, clumpy, clay-like dirt that clings to your shovel like it has abandonment issues. This is how medieval sieges often began, with the construction of siege lines and earthworks. Not flashy. Not heroic. Just endless dirt displacement. Digging closer and closer to the city walls while trying not to get turned into a pincushion by enemy archers. Historians still argue whether these trenches truly accelerated siege success or just gave soldiers something to do besides complain about the soup. You make a slow, aching rhythm: scoop, lift, dump. Scoop, lift, dump. Occasionally, you pause to swear at a rock the size of your head that refuses to budge. Eventually, you learn to dig around it and pretend it isn't a metaphor for the futility of your efforts. Somewhere nearby, someone is singing again. The same tune from last night's loot. You think it's about a cow that joins a monastery. You're too tired to laugh. By midday, your hands are blistered, your back aches, and your trench has progressed a whole, maybe, 10 feet. You glance over the lip of the shallow ditch and squint at the city walls in the distance. Still standing. Still smug. Occasionally, a figure walks along the parapet above. Just a silhouette. But you swear one of them waves. Your supervisor, a man whose only talent seems to be shouting at angles, informs you it's time to reinforce the trench. You lay planks along the sides to prevent collapse, hammering them into place with a rock because your unit misplaced the mallet during a dice game gone wrong. There's an engineer nearby. Well, they call him an engineer, but he's mostly a guy with chalk, a stick, and a talent for sketching rectangles in the dirt. He claims to know Roman methods. You don't question it, but you do notice he's been building the same temporary observation platform for 3 days and it still isn't taller than your tent. Later, the digging stops. You're rotated out for a brief break. You sit at the edge of the trench, chewing a strip of meat that might have been beef in a past life. Someone next to you asks, "What are we digging toward again?" Another man shrugs. "Glory, probably." A third just mutters, "Their wine cellar." You laugh. Sort of. Then it's back to the shovels. Eventually, you're told the trenches are close enough to start creating covered approaches, zigzag pathways with wooden planks and dirt mounds to hide movement. They look like someone tried to design a maze while drunk. But they work, kind of. You can now crawl a bit closer to the wall without catching an arrow in the eye. Of course, the defenders aren't just watching you work in silence. They've started sending gifts. Buckets of waste hurled over the walls. Sometimes fire pots. Sometimes, just insults. One guy yells your horse eats better than you. And it actually stings a little because it's true. As evening rolls in, a group of workers start the night shift. You, thankfully, get to rest. Sort of. You lie down in a trench still wet from rain and wonder if your spine will ever forgive you. A man nearby swears he's seen a mole the size of a dog. Another says it's probably a badger. You don't care. You just don't want it chewing on your boots again. Somewhere across the muddy expanse, a horn sounds from the city walls. Everyone freezes. You clutch your shovel like it might somehow defend you. But nothing follows. Just the distant sound of laughter echoing off the stones. Turns out it was just a wedding inside the city. Bells ring. Music floats across the fields. You try not to think about warm food, real candles, dancing. You resume digging. Occasionally, your trench hits an old grave or a ruined wall from some earlier, forgotten war. You pause. You offer a silent apology to whoever's bones you just disturbed. Then you dig around them and keep going. Quirky fact, in some sieges, ancient ruins from older cities were literally tunneled through again. It's like warfare was recycling. You reach a milestone by the end of the week. Your trench has moved within about 150 yards of the outer wall. Just enough for the next phase to begin, maybe siege towers, maybe rams, maybe just more digging. But you're closer. And weirdly, you feel something. Not pride. Not exactly hope. But a strange satisfaction. Dirt under your nails. Calluses on your hands. Progress measured in inches, not victories. As you haul yourself out of the trench and trudge toward your tent, your legs almost give out. But you grin. A little. Because tomorrow, you'll dig again. And maybe, just maybe, the city will blink first. The next morning, the sun peeks through the clouds like it's mildly ashamed to be here. You rub your eyes and stretch your arms, already aching from yesterday's trench work. Today, though, there's a different kind of misery waiting, the siege tower. You don't just see the siege tower being built, you hear it. A constant symphony of creaking wood, groaning pulleys, and the occasional curse shouted by a carpenter who just smashed his thumb. The thing is a monster, 3 stories tall already, wobbling slightly in the breeze like it knows how ridiculous it looks. Siege towers were the skyscrapers of medieval war, designed to roll slowly toward a city wall while packed with archers, crossbowmen, and very brave people with swords. The idea is to get your troops up to the same level as the defenders so you can charge across a drawbridge and start the very dangerous process of getting stabbed at eye level. Today, you're helping move lumber. Beams the size of trees, lashed together with rope and iron nails. The carpenters bark orders while sawing and hammering non-stop. You're impressed by their energy, until you remember most of them are drinking boiled turnip wine between shifts. Your hands are blistered by the second hour. You smell like pitch and sap. Your reward? A lukewarm cup of broth and a half-rotted apple with 1 good bite left in it. You eat it anyway. No shame now. A fellow soldier points to the structure and mutters, "It's going to fall over the moment we push it." You nod. Because he's probably right. You overhear a commander explaining how this tower is different. Better balanced. Reinforced. Covered in wet hides to prevent it from catching fire. Historians still argue whether these layers of protection actually worked or just delayed the inevitable torching by a clever defender with a bucket of flaming oil. Construction drags on for days. The tower takes shape slowly, like a drunk trying to fold a giant wooden accordion. It has stairs inside, platforms, and little slits for archers. Some of the steps creak with foreboding menace. One collapses entirely, sending a bowman tumbling. He limps away, more annoyed than injured. You spend a whole day cutting hides from dead animals to drape over the tower. The smell is apocalyptic. By nightfall, your clothes are soaked in grease and your stomach has permanently turned against you. But the engineers insist this step is crucial. Fireproofing, they say. Meanwhile, the defenders on the city wall are clearly watching. One morning, you find a sign hanging from the parapets. It reads, "Nice tower. Would be a shame if it burned." You have to admit, that's some quality trash talk. You get a turn on guard duty near the construction site. That means standing in mud for 6 hours while watching a giant wooden cube exist. Occasionally, you scan the city walls, half hoping for excitement, half praying for silence. A pigeon lands nearby and coos disapprovingly at your posture. On the 4th day, the tower finally moves. Barely. Dozens of soldiers push against massive wheels. It groans, lurches, then stops. Someone cheers. Someone else falls flat on their face in the mud. You take your position, middle level, shield at the ready, stomach clenched. Rolling the siege tower toward the wall is not dramatic. It's slow. Agonizing. Every few feet, the wheels hit a rut. Every hour, someone needs to realign the planks under the base to keep it from sinking. At one point, the entire structure leans so precariously that half your team jumps out the back. And then come the arrows. They whistle through the air, thunking into the wooden sides. One slams into a viewing slit inches from your eye. You duck instinctively and shout something that probably makes no sense. The man beside you is laughing, not because it's funny, but because panic and humor are now roommates in his head. The defenders start throwing things. Pots of fire, boiling sand, maybe a chamber pot. One of the hides begins to smolder. Buckets of water are passed hand to hand in a frantic, splashing chain. Someone just keeps yelling it's fine. Which, historically, is rarely true. Eventually, the tower reaches the wall. The drawbridge creaks into place with all the grace of an old barn door. And there it hangs, waiting for someone to cross first. You look at the man next to you. He looks at the drawbridge. Neither of you moves. For a moment, time slows. The defenders are lined up above, spears glinting, arrows notched. And then a trumpet blows behind you, and the order is given. Forward. The first few charge up the ramp, shields high, ducking behind the wood as missiles rain down. You follow, heart hammering like a blacksmith's anvil. Your feet thud against the boards, and then you're on the top level of the tower, staring at the city wall not 10 feet away. It's chaos. Crossbow bolts fly. Someone screams. The drawbridge slams down hard against the enemy parapet, and a wave of soldiers surges forward, spilling into the defenders' line like angry ants. But you hang back. Not out of cowardice, just practicality. You've seen what happens to the first wave. You let them go ahead. Let them clear a path. Let the tower creak and groan and spit out more chaos. And sure enough, the tower begins to catch fire again. This time, more serious. You hear a whoosh, feel the heat. The hides can only do so much. One of the side walls cracks. You backpedal down the ramp and leap out the rear just as someone shouts, "Abandon it." The tower tips slightly, then holds. But it's done. You limped back to the line, covered in soot and sweat and deeply disappointed that you did all that work just to run back to your trench again. Still, it was closer than yesterday. Tomorrow, maybe the next tower will hold. Or maybe someone invents a better idea. Like, not doing this at all. The morning starts with shouting. Loud, panicked shouting. You bolt upright, grab your helmet, still damp from last night's drizzle, and stumble out of your tent, heart thudding. You think maybe the defenders are counterattacking. Or worse, another tower collapsed on the latrines. But no. It's just the engineers arguing again. You squint toward the noise and spot them, huddled around a half-built structure with a comically large wooden head. One of them gestures wildly at the design while another kicks the base. A third just sits nearby, eating something that looks suspiciously like raw turnip. Siege engineering, it's equal parts science, violence, and temper tantrums. Today, you're working with the battering ram crew. The massive log lies waiting beneath a wooden frame, like a sleeping beast in a cage. Covered with wet hides to protect it from fire, it sways slightly in the wind, hung by ropes like a giant, angry cradle. Rams are simple machines, really. Just a giant tree trunk swung repeatedly at gates, trying to convince the wood to give up and go home. It's not subtle. It's not elegant. But it works. You step inside the frame. It's darker than you expect. Damp, smoky, and close. The air smells like sweat, pitch, and very old cheese. 8 of you line up, 4 on each side, and grab the handles. You wait for the signal. Then, heave. The ram swings forward and thud, slams into the imaginary gate in training. No gate here yet. You're practicing first. Great. Again. Thud. Again. Thud. You start to understand why medieval sieges lasted months. Because battering down a fortified gate takes the kind of patience normally reserved for monks or people in very long queue lines. By the 3rd hour, your arms are numb. Your shoulder has developed a twitch. You've started naming the ram. Gerald. Gerald the gatebreaker. Your commander peeks inside and yells, "Harder." Which is both unhelpful and obvious. You glare at him. He disappears. Eventually, you move the ram into position, not against the gate itself, but along the approach trench that leads to the walls. The defenders haven't fired yet. That worries you more than if they had. It means they're waiting. Finally, it's time. The ram advances slowly, clumsily. Soldiers drag it forward, wheels squealing, the frame swaying with every bump. Arrows start falling like rain. Most glance off the wet hides. A few don't. A man beside you drops with a sound that makes your stomach twist. He's pulled away without ceremony. You reach the gate. It's taller than you expected. Iron-studded. Decorated with what might be wolf heads, or just very confident dogs. You stare at it a moment before grabbing your handle again. Thud. The sound is like a giant knocking on a coffin. Thud. The ram smashes into the gate, bouncing slightly with each impact. Bits of wood chip off. Splinters fly. Above, defenders shout. You can't make out the words, but the tone is somewhere between mocking and alarmed. Someone drops a pot of boiling pitch nearby. It misses, but not by much. The steam hisses against the damp earth. One of your crew throws up from the smell. Thud. Gerald keeps swinging. Now the gate starts to groan. A low creaking sound, like it's considering retirement. You all start chanting, something rhythmic, meaningless. It helps keep the tempo. You look up through the gaps in the hide and spot movement, figures above the gate, shifting. You brace for rocks, oil, something worse. But instead, a bag drops. It bursts on impact. Flour. Or lime. A fine white cloud fills the space. You cough, blinded, stumbling back. A clever trick. You rub your eyes and swing again, disoriented. Thud. The gate holds. Someone in the back shouts that reinforcements are coming. You think that's good news. Or maybe they're just coming to take over while you collapse in a puddle. You hand off your handle and stagger out of the frame, gulping fresh air. The noise of the ram continues behind you. Steady. Relentless. Almost comforting now. Back in camp, you sit on a crate and remove your gloves. Your hands are raw. Splintered. You pop a blister with the corner of your helmet and don't even flinch. This is your life now. Nearby, someone roasts a rat. You watch without judgment. It smells decent. Over dinner, boiled roots and something that might be pigeon, you hear a story from another ram team. Apparently, at a different siege, the defenders opened the gate themselves, let the ram in, then collapsed the gate behind it and trapped the crew inside the courtyard. A horrifying but undeniably clever tactic. Historians still argue whether it actually happened or if it was just the medieval version of a war joke. Either way, you decide to keep a very close eye on the hinges tomorrow. Before sleep, you walk near the lines again. The ram is silent now, resting in place. A sentry paces beside it, humming to himself. You pat the side of the beast once and murmur, "Good work, Gerald." Inside your tent, the wind whistles through a gap in the flap. You close your eyes, and in the darkness, you still hear the echo. Thud. 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 It's almost soothing. The next morning, you're woken not by shouting, or a goat chewing on your cloak like last week, but by a thud. A deep, resonant one, far off in the direction of the city walls. You lie still, listening. Thud. Whistle, splat. Ah. Trebuchets. It begins. You crawl out of your tent and stretch with a wince. Your back sounds like a sack of dry twigs snapping. Around the camp, soldiers are already gathered near the forward line, pointing and squinting through the mist. The first siege engines have been wheeled into position. And today, you're helping operate one. A trebuchet, no less, the proud, moody granddaddy of all medieval contraptions designed to throw large things at larger things. This one is called the Cranky Saint. Nobody remembers why. It's tall, awkwardly angled, and held together with rope, patches of iron, and some deeply questionable optimism. You suspect it's haunted. The engineer in charge is an older man who refers to the counterweight as his little darling. He rubs the wood lovingly and hisses at anyone who gets too close. You give him space. Your first job. Load ammunition. Not rocks, at least, not yet. Today's ammo includes barrels of spoiled meat, broken pottery, and yes, a cow. Well, what's left of a cow? The head is missing, the legs are tied up, and the smell is something between sewage and sadness. Welcome to the gross side of psychological warfare. You and two others help winch the sling into position, swearing under your breath as the ropes bite into your palms. The trebuchet creaks and groans like it resents waking up. You can relate. Once it's ready, the engineer gives the signal. You all step back. A lever is pulled. The arm swings forward with a sudden, graceful violence, and the projectile, let's call it Sir Moo, flies through the sky in a majestic arc. You can almost hear a choir. Then. Splat. Right inside the enemy courtyard. There's a cheer from the crew. Someone bows. The engineer claps once and says, now rocks. Trebuchets were marvels of medieval engineering. Unlike catapults, they used gravity, a giant counterweight, to launch objects farther and with more control. Historians still debate whether their effectiveness justified the immense effort to build and move them. But nobody debates the joy of watching a diseased donkey explode mid-air. Your next shot is a bundle of broken roof tiles tied together. Why? No idea. But it sounds satisfying. The bundle spins as it flies, hits the outer wall, and sends a satisfying spray of splinters and dust into the air. You mark it down as a win. Then it's boulders. These are serious. Rounded, heavy, and carved with little rude faces for morale. You roll one into the sling and step back. The throw is perfect. It smashes into the base of a corner tower. A chunk of masonry crumbles. Not much, but enough to make your arm hairs stand up. The defenders respond soon after. Not with trebuchets, they haven't fired one yet, but with archers, shouting, and some kind of large bell that rings whenever a shot lands close. The bell rings a lot today. At one point, someone from the enemy's side hangs a banner that reads, "Nice aim. Try the front gate." It's both petty and motivational. The next few hours are a blur of reloads, yells, winching, and wood creaks. One shot misfires, and the arm slams forward before the payload's properly released. The rock tumbles out early, landing in your own trench line. No one's hurt, but your commander's hat vanishes in the debris. He's not thrilled. Break time consists of stale bread and watching another crew load something suspiciously round and fleshy into their engine. You ask what it is. Sheep bladder, filled with bees, one guy says. You laugh. He doesn't. Turns out, flinging things like animal carcasses, plague-ridden corpses, or incendiaries was common. It wasn't just about breaking walls, it was about breaking people. Spirits, stomachs, sleep. You'd fling a bloated donkey carcass into someone's garden, and suddenly everyone's losing their appetite and faith in their gods. You get a rare moment of peace while refilling the counterweight with sandbags. A young page walks by humming, completely unfazed by the carnage around him. He offers you a plum. You accept it with reverence. It's the first sweet thing you've eaten in 2 weeks. You don't even care that it might be slightly fermented. Later in the day, you try to guess the trajectory of a throw before it lands. You start making bets. Right parapet. Middle courtyard. Water well. One man insists he can call the landing zone based on the creak of the lever. You stop listening to him after he predicts a perfect hit and the payload crushes his soup pot instead. The sun begins to dip, casting long shadows across the siege field. Your arms are trembling with exhaustion. Your clothes are stiff with sweat and powdered stone. The trebuchet is silent now, its wooden arm pointed skyward like a question no one wants to answer. One last shot is loaded for the night. A rock the size of a hog, etched with a single word in Latin, surrender. You all gather to watch. No one speaks. The engineer pulls the lever. The sling snaps. The rock flies. It hits near the wall, maybe just above the southern gate. Dust and debris cloud the air. When it clears, a chunk of the upper wall is gone. Not much. But enough to leave a scar. Back at camp, over boiled grain and sour wine, everyone talks about the shot. Will they surrender? Will they fire back? Will that goat ever stop screaming? You lie in your tent later, hands throbbing, ears ringing from a day of impact and laughter and shouted warnings. Outside, the trebuchet creaks slightly in the wind. And somewhere out there, in a city you still haven't seen the inside of, someone is sweeping up what's left of Sir Moo Moo. You wake to the sound of a bowstring snapping, an angry twang followed by a string of very creative curses. Someone's fletching table collapsed again. You roll onto your side, groaning softly, and peer out through the tent flap into another misty gray morning. It's archery rotation today. Lucky you. As you shuffle over to the forward line, bow slung across your back and quiver rattling like a sack of angry pencils, you spot the rows of targets set up for practice. Straw-stuffed sacks propped against wooden stakes, many already riddled with arrows like a porcupine convention gone wrong. Today, your job isn't glorious. You're not leading the charge, building towers, or flinging livestock. No, you're spending 12 hours squinting down a splintered shaft, firing arrows over a wall you can barely see, and hoping you don't accidentally hit your own ram crew. Again. The bow you've been issued is a longbow, 6 feet of yew in tension, designed to snap arrows through armor like a hot knife through chicken legs. Powerful, elegant, and an absolute nightmare on your shoulder after the 50th shot. Your companion today is a wiry man named Joss who has one eye and no sense of volume control. Left wind. He yells every few minutes, whether the wind has changed or not. He claims it's his instinct. You're pretty sure it's just drama. You take position behind a makeshift palisade. The wooden slats provide some cover, though not from your aching lower back. You draw your first arrow. Deep breath. Steady fingers. Exhale. Thunk. It lands somewhere. Probably on the wall. Maybe in a tree. Possibly a pigeon. You'll never know. Welcome to long-distance warfare. Archers play a special role in sieges, constant pressure, constant noise, and the occasional lucky shot that ruins someone's lunch inside the city. You aim again and fire. Thunk. Again. Thunk. Then you switch to your crossbow. Yes, you have a crossbow too. You're not fancy, but you are resourceful. Crossbows are heavier, slower to reload, and often frowned upon by knights who think real warriors should wave swords. But the crossbow makes up for it by being easy to aim and terrifying at short range. You kneel, crank the bowstring back with a loud creak, and load a quarrel. You peek over the wall and aim at a movement near the parapet. Twunk. The bolt whistles and vanishes into the distance. You have no idea where it lands, but someone on the wall ducks a second later. You count that as a moral victory. Archery during sieges is less about accuracy and more about volume. Keep shooting, keep them ducking, keep the defenders too rattled to relax or make fancy speeches from their battlements. A boy brings fresh arrows in a bundle. You thank him with a nod and he scurries off, probably to deliver a note or swipe leftover cheese from the command tent. Nearby, a pair of veteran archers are exchanging tips. One swears by goose feathers for his fletching. The other insists raven feathers are spiritually aligned with vengeance. Historians still argue whether different fletching styles made much practical difference or were just ancient equivalent of personal flair. Joss, your loud friend, fires 3 arrows in quick succession and cheers as one disappears over the wall. I bet that one hit someone important. He cackles. Then his bowstring snaps, and he nearly takes his own ear off. Karma. Midday brings a lull. You sit behind the palisade, sipping from a water skin that tastes faintly of vinegar and boot leather. The camp is quiet, save for the distant thump of a trebuchet and the occasional shout of medic. Or who took my bread? Then comes the retaliation. Arrows rain down from the city walls. Not many, but enough. They hiss through the air like angry hornets. One slams into the palisade a foot from your nose. You flinch and drop your bow. Joss howls with laughter. They've got a new batch of archers, he says. Sharp ones, too. You crawl to a safer position and start scanning the wall for shapes. You spot a helmet crest, tall, red, and possibly ridiculous, peeking above the stone. You load your crossbow, aim carefully. Twonk. The crest disappears. You don't see a body, but again, you'll take the win. In the afternoon, a curious moment, a lone arrow flies from the city, landing gently in the mud between the lines. Attached is a scroll. A message. You don't touch it, too risky, but an officer retrieves it and reads it aloud later. It says, "Nice shooting. Try aiming left next time. Regards, the Red Helm." Even siege warfare has its trolls. By the 5th hour of your shift, your fingers are raw, your eyes are blurry, and you've started naming your arrows. "This one's Kevin," you whisper, drawing back your longbow. "Fly true, Kevin." Thunk. Kevin hits a tree. Classic Kevin. Sometimes, archers use fire arrows during sieges. It looks impressive, but it's a tricky business, requires dry conditions, and more importantly, a place for the fire to go. Today, it's too damp. So you settle for sharp, cold iron and some very petty commentary shouted between volleys. "Tell your walls I said hi." Joss yells. He's not good at insults. In the evening, you return to camp, fingers stained with pitch and calluses forming along your draw fingers. You sit by a fire and flex your aching hand while chewing on bread so hard you suspect it was originally designed for building walls. A fellow soldier complains that an arrow split his cooking pot earlier. Someone else is convinced the defenders are using cursed fletching. Someone else says they saw an owl catch an arrow midair. You let the stories wash over you like warm bathwater made of nonsense. You close your eyes that night with phantom bowstring still tugging in your muscles. In your dreams, arrows fly through the sky like stars, blinking against the twilight, vanishing before they land. You sleep with your quiver still on. Just in case. You wake up, and nothing is happening. No shouting. No fire. No trebuchet arms swinging. No arrows whistling overhead. Just a heavy, soul-deep silence that settles over the siege camp like a wool blanket damp with dread. You poke your head out of your tent. It's foggy, thick fog, the kind that mutes sound and hides smells and makes every distant shape look vaguely like a horse or a ghost. Even the birds are quiet. The firewood is damp. Your cloak is damp. Your hope is damp. Today, you're not building. Not firing. Not digging. You're doing something far more excruciating, waiting. Welcome to the most painfully slow tactic in the siege arsenal, starvation. The goal is brutally simple: cut off the city's supplies, wait until everyone inside runs out of food, then hope they give up before you die of old age or boredom. No explosions. No glorious battles. Just hunger. On both sides, eventually. You shuffle toward the perimeter line where soldiers lounge beside spears stuck upright in the ground like oversized chopsticks. Most of them are half asleep or playing some kind of gambling game involving carved bones, beetle shells, and a lot of arguing. There's a watch schedule now. You're assigned 4 hours of standing around and staring at walls. At this point, you know every crack in the stone, every tower window, and every spot where someone once threw a flaming barrel. You lean on your spear and look out toward the city. Smoke curls from a few chimneys. People are still cooking. Still surviving. Still defiant. That's annoying. One of the older soldiers, a leathery man who smells permanently of boiled onions, tells you about another siege he lived through. Says they waited 6 months. The defenders finally surrendered because their nobles had started eating library parchment soup. You blink. That's either a fringe historical tidbit or the world's driest stew recipe. Back at camp, rations are being stretched. You can feel it. Bread's thinner. Meat's saltier, tougher, suspiciously squirrel-shaped. There's more soup than usual, but less stuff in the soup. You fish out a boiled root that might once have been a turnip, or a rock. There are whispers that the enemy has started rationing too. Scouts have seen fewer animals in the city pens. One rumor claims the city's pigeons have disappeared. No one's seen a cat in days. You do the grim math. You hear about a siege long ago where a defending city reportedly resorted to making sausage from leather boots and mouse meat. Historians still argue whether that's true or just a metaphor. You try not to imagine the taste. Morale starts to wobble. Soldiers grow irritable. Jokes are stale. Fights break out over petty things. Someone took an extra swig of wine, someone else whistled too loud. You hear someone yell, "You call that a cloak?" With the kind of fury usually reserved for betrayals and forgotten birthdays. There are fewer fires at night now. Not for stealth, but because fuel is running low. You huddle close with your unit, sharing body heat and silent prayers that this ends soon, somehow, anyhow. The commanders continue their rounds, trying to look inspiring. One gives a rousing speech about duty and honor. His beard is braided and very clean. You respect the effort, even if his boots clearly haven't touched mud all day. The truth is, everyone is just waiting for cracks to appear. Not just in the city walls, but in the people inside them. You start paying more attention to the tiny details: how many torches are lit at night? How many guards patrol the outer ramparts? Whether any gate creaks open longer than it should. Patience is the real weapon now. Some soldiers play strategy games with stones and lines scratched into wood. Others carve. You take up whittling for the first time and accidentally make something that looks like a misshapen duck. You name it Sir Beak. During your night watch, you stare at the dark shape of the city and think about the people inside. What are they doing right now? Huddling? Crying? Fighting over the last carrot? Or maybe, just maybe, they're having a feast to spite you. And you? You're chewing on a biscuit so dry it absorbs the moisture in your mouth like a sponge with trust issues. The days blur together. The trenches collapse and are redug. The tower tilts slightly but holds. The trebuchet is quiet, out of rocks or out of spite. Everything is still. Too still. Until one day, a crow flies out from the city. It circles the sky and lands near the latrines. That doesn't seem important. But the next day, another crow arrives, this time with a strip of red cloth tied around its leg. A message? A prank? A deeply confused bird? The officers retrieve it and vanish into a tent. Nothing comes of it. Probably just more waiting. Someone in your tent swears they heard drums from inside the city last night. Siege fever, maybe. Or maybe someone's cracking. Hard to tell now. The lines between hallucination and reality blur in this kind of monotony. At one point, a deserter is caught sneaking back into camp from the woods. He claims he was foraging. They find a squirrel carcass in his bag and a diary filled with recipes involving moss. He's reassigned to latrine duty indefinitely. One evening, someone fires a single arrow toward the city with a note attached. It reads, "Are you hungry yet?" A day later, the defenders respond by hanging a roasted chicken on the wall, slowly turning on a spit. Nobody laughs. That's just cruel. The boredom doesn't end. It deepens. It settles into your bones, into your fingernails, into your dreams. But the city? It's still standing. Barely. You can feel the weariness from their side now. The smoke from their chimneys is thinner. The guards change less often. The banners sag. You wonder which side breaks first. The next morning brings something different, a color not seen in days, white. Not snow. Not surrender. A white flag, tied to a pole, raised high above the city's western wall. Immediately, everything shifts. Soldiers perk up. Officers scramble. Someone drops a pot of porridge, and no one even bothers to curse about it. You squint through the mist. Yep, definitely white. Definitely waving. And definitely, confusing. That flag means parley. A chance to talk. Maybe surrender, maybe stalling, maybe just an elaborate way to insult your haircut in person. No one's sure yet. You're told to stay near the palisade in case something interesting happens. You take that to mean don't do anything, but be ready to die, just in case. Classic siege logic. Out on the flat, open ground between the city and the siege lines, a small group emerges through the gates. They walk slowly, cloaked, armed only with scrolls and smug expressions. Their boots crunch on the frost-covered grass. The rest of the city remains silent behind them. Your side sends out its own party, officers, translators, scribes, and one very grumpy knight who looks like he hasn't slept in 3 days. He's there for intimidation. Or maybe just because no one could stop him from tagging along. The two groups meet in the middle. No swords drawn, no arrows fired. Just stiff bows and cold glances. And then the talking begins. You can't hear it from this distance. You just watch from your post, trying to read body language. There's a lot of pointing. A few scrolls are handed over. Someone gestures at the sky, possibly referencing divine judgment, or the weather, or that one bird circling ominously above. This, apparently, is diplomacy. Parley during a siege is like trying to flirt during a boxing match. It's awkward, rarely works, and often ends with someone punching someone else anyway. But it's tradition. Historians still debate whether most parleys were sincere or simply meant to buy time. Some commanders offered peace terms just to stall for reinforcements, or to lull the enemy into thinking surrender was imminent. Others used it as a stage for psychological warfare. One duke once brought a roasted pig to parley, ate it in front of starving negotiators, and then left. History is cruel. And salty. Back in camp, bets are already being placed. I say they surrender by sundown. No way. They've got another week of rats in there. I heard their duke married a goat. This doesn't mean anything. You're still watching when something strange happens. One of the enemy delegates, tall, hooded, sharp movements, throws his hands up and storms away from the group. The others try to calm him. Your officers look annoyed. The meeting ends shortly after that, with stiff nods and no handshakes. The city party retreats. The gates close behind them. The white flag remains for another hour, fluttering in the wind like a shrug. Later that afternoon, the officers debrief the camp. The city refuses to surrender. They claim they still have food and morale. Lie. They also request honorable terms, which is medieval code for please don't burn everything when you eventually get in. Your commanders respond with the usual, surrender or face total destruction. The kind of threat that feels dramatic but loses some effect when it's delivered by a scribe with a nasal voice and ink stains on his tunic. You get the sense this parley was less about terms and more about testing each other's nerves. That night, another arrow message comes from the city. You find it stuck in the palisade. Scrawled in rough Latin, try again next time. Our soup is still warm. Jerks. Still, something's shifted. Maybe the white flag was a bluff. Maybe they're close to cracking. Or maybe the defenders are just playing the same game you are, stalling, pretending to be stronger than they feel. You sit with your unit by the embers of a dying fire. One of your friends reenacts the parley with sticks and a roasted beet. His impression of your captain is uncanny, mostly scowling and adjusting his belt. Laughter rolls across the group, brittle and brief, like ice cracking on a pond. Then a hush falls. Because across the fields, just above the city walls, someone is singing. It's faint. High, mournful. A woman's voice, drifting through the night air. The language is foreign, maybe a prayer, maybe a lullaby. Maybe just a hallucination caused by hunger and too much onion soup. You listen. And suddenly the siege doesn't feel like a battlefield. It feels like a long, terrible misunderstanding between two groups of exhausted people who just want to go home. By morning, the flag is gone. You take your position again. Watch the wall. Wait for the next signal. And wonder whether anyone in there slept better than you did. The morning sun glints off a heap of skulls. No, you're not hallucinating. There they are, right in front of the city's outer gate. A tidy little pyramid of pale, grinning faces, stacked with grim precision. Someone even arranged a few smaller bones around the base like decoration. You blink a few times. Others gather beside you, all staring. No one speaks at first. Then someone says what everyone's thinking, that wasn't there yesterday. Psychological warfare. Subtle? No. Effective? Maybe. This is a classic siege move, an ancient, theatrical way to say, you're next. And whether the skulls are from long-dead enemies, plague victims, or just very unlucky farm animals, the message is clear. The defenders want to rattle you. Later that morning, someone spots another addition, a freshly painted banner hanging from the wall, scrawled in charcoal and something red that might be dye, or might not be. It reads, "Come and get it." Below it, someone's drawn a smiling face. Big teeth. Very artistic. A group of junior officers debate what this all means. A bluff, one says. A cry for help, says another. Performance art, mutters a third. You just keep eating your morning porridge, which tastes even more depressing now that it's seasoned with existential dread. Psychological tactics were common in medieval sieges. Everyone's exhausted, dirty, and paranoid. So if you can mess with their minds without even lifting a sword, you're already winning. One siege in history reportedly involved tossing diseased heads over the walls day and night, not for the disease, but just to disturb. Historians still argue whether this tactic demoralized the enemy or simply turned the battlefield into the worst-smelling place in Europe. And here, the smell is getting worse. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's the psychological games seeping into your dreams. At lunch, someone hears strange noises from the city, rhythmic drumming. Not marching. Not music. Just a slow, pulsing beat. It goes on for hours. No variation. No meaning. Just, beat. 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 You're not even sure it's real at first. Maybe your heart is doing something weird. But then your friend hears it too. And then the whole forward line starts whispering about it. What is it? You ask. Sound of their stomachs, someone jokes. Someone else says it's a countdown. You check the sky just in case. By the afternoon, things escalate. Near the trench line, a soldier finds a sack. Inside, wooden dolls. All painted like your side's officers. Crude faces. Some missing limbs. One doll has nails driven through it. Another is painted with a crown, your commander. Its head is cracked. You pass them around. No one laughs. One man burns them. Another keeps one and names it Gregor. Then comes the howling. After sunset, a chorus of eerie, warbling cries echoes from the city walls. Some sound human. some do not. They rise and fall like wind through dead trees, each wail sharp enough to chill your spine. You clutch your cloak tighter. Others huddle together. A horse nearby panics, kicking at its tether. The howling continues until midnight. Then silence. Just like that. Someone whispers, "They're trying to break us." You think about that. And realize, it's kind of working. That night, you dream of skulls. Not the pile. Just, faces. Watching. Not angry. Not vengeful. Just there. You wake with your heart pounding and your blanket wrapped so tight around your neck it takes a minute to breathe properly. The next morning, the gate is open. Not wide open. Just, ajar. Enough to make a point. The entire camp stands still. Archers notch arrows. Commanders freeze mid-stride. You squint into the gap. Nothing moves. No one walks out. No one walks in. It stays open for exactly 13 minutes. Then it closes. Slowly. With a creak loud enough to make you flinch. You swear the skull pyramid is one row taller today. And then, midday, the birds leave. You don't notice it right away. But someone points to the sky and says, "Where'd the crows go?" You look. They're gone. All of them. Not a single wing or squawk remains. Just silence. Heavy, unnatural, like the air's waiting for something to happen. In one siege from history, defenders reportedly used a giant drum to pound all night, keeping attackers awake. Eventually, the besiegers started turning on each other, just to break the noise. There's no drum here. But the effect is similar. You haven't slept right in 3 days. No one has. Later, a small cat walks out of the city and into no man's land. Just, strolls out. Past the gate. Past the palisade. Stops in front of your trench, sits down, and grooms itself. Everyone watches. Someone whispers, "Is that a messenger?" You're not sure whether to pet it or run away. The cat leaves the same way it came. Tail high. Zero fear. The next morning, the city hangs laundry on the walls. You swear you're not imagining it. Bright white sheets. Tunics. Undergarments. Even a pair of enormous bloomers flapping like flags. What's the point? Taunting you with cleanliness? Mocking your exhaustion? Or are they just, living? Still there. Still human. It's the weirdest tactic of all, normalcy. And it's working. That night, as you lie awake, listening for howls, drums, or meows, you realize something. They might be losing food. They might be exhausted. But they're not giving up. And they're messing with your head, one skull, one doll, one laundry day at a time. Tonight, you don't sleep. Not because of the usual reasons, snoring, nightmares, rats doing interpretive dance across your chest, but because it's your turn for a special assignment. You're going on a sneak and stab mission. Officially, it's called a night infiltration, which sounds fancy until you realize it mostly involves crawling through mud and whispering out every time you hit a rock. The goal is simple in theory: sneak up to the walls under cover of darkness, disrupt something, supply wagons, guards, maybe a watchtower, and sneak back. In practice, it's dark, it's dangerous, and it smells strongly of regret. You're briefed at dusk. Your group's small, 6 people, all wearing black cloaks, faces smeared with soot. Someone even has a sprig of garlic tucked into their belt, for luck. Or vampires. Either way, fair. Your commander whispers instructions: stay low, follow the dry gully near the southern trench, and absolutely, under no circumstances, yell if you step on something dead. Comforting. You set out just before moonrise. The world is hushed. Your boots barely make a sound in the muck. Every twig sounds like a thunderclap. The fog has crept in again, thick enough to taste. Somewhere nearby, an owl hoots with impeccable comedic timing. The gully is narrower than you expected, almost a ditch. You shuffle sideways like a very tense crab, hand on your dagger, ears straining. Eventually, the city wall looms above you. Massive. Quiet. Unfeeling. You hug the base like it might hug you back, which it absolutely will not. You spot the target, a small wooden gate half covered by crates and ivy. Used for nighttime patrols. Light flickers behind it. You crouch. Wait. Breathe. One of your group, a wiry lad named Elric, slips ahead. He carries a short sword and a reckless smirk. He vanishes into the shadows like he's done this before. You count the seconds. 10. 20. 45. Then, tap tap tap. 3 soft knocks against the stone. The signal. You move forward, quietly, every step a negotiation with the mud and your own nervous system. You reach the gate. The lock's broken. Already picked. Of course it is, Elric's humming quietly. Inside, it's dark and cramped. A short corridor with stone walls slick with moisture. You hear movement above, boots pacing the ramparts. Too far to reach. Close enough to panic about. You advance. Every room you pass is empty. Storage mostly, barrels, rope, sacks of something dry and crunchy. At one point, Elric pockets a handful. Could be almonds, he whispers. You pray it's not gravel. Then you hear a door creak. You all freeze, pressed against the walls. A lantern light flickers around the corner. Footsteps. A muttered curse. A yawning guard steps into view, scratching his stomach with one hand, holding bread in the other. He doesn't see you. Elric moves like water. One quick step, a flash of silver, and the guard crumples silently. The bread lands in a puddle. You all stare at it a little too long. You move again, upstairs now, through a spiral passage slick with moss. One person nearly slips and is caught by their cloak. No sound. No alarms. On the upper level, you peek through a slit in the wall. Below, the inner courtyard. Silent. Torches burn low. A cat slinks across the cobblestones, possibly the same one from earlier. You feel like it's judging you. Then you hear it, soft voices from a room nearby. Laughing. Drunken, maybe. You approach, press your ear to the door. Cards. Dice. A pot of stew. Elric nods. We scare them, they shout, we bolt. Get their nerves twitching. Or we die, you think. But you nod anyway. He bursts in. You follow. Chaos. Screaming. A jug crashes. One guard draws a dagger and is instantly tackled. Someone yells something unintelligible about socks. You knock over the stew and trip on a stool. Then, out. Back down the stairs, past the now very dead guard, out the gate and into the night. Shouts rise behind you. Horns blare from the ramparts. Arrows hiss through the fog. You run like you've never run before, boots splashing, heart pounding. One arrow grazes your shoulder. It feels like ice and lightning. You don't stop. Behind you, torches bob through the darkness. The defenders are out, angry, and organized. Your group scatters at the trench. You leap in, roll, tumble, crawl through the slime. You keep going. You don't breathe again until you hit your camp's outer pickets and hear a familiar, bored voice say, "You again?" You collapse. The next morning, the city is noisy. Alert. Jumpy. Extra torches. Extra patrols. No stew being served publicly. Inside your tent, your wound is bandaged. It's shallow, but dramatic looking. You milk it for an extra portion of wine. It tastes like regret and old socks, but you call it a win. Elric passes by, tossing something your way. You catch it. A tiny, carved token. A playing piece. From the card game. Souvenir, he says with a grin. Then vanishes into the fog. Sneak missions like these were common in medieval sieges: sabotage, scouting, mischief. Not always successful. Not always survivable. But sometimes, they made a difference. Historians still argue whether these nighttime forays genuinely turned the tide of long sieges, or if they just helped keep troops from unraveling from sheer, crushing boredom. You lie back, shoulder throbbing, eyes drifting closed. You dream of ivy-covered gates and silent corridors and stew you never got to eat. And somewhere, the cat watches. It starts with a dull thud beneath your feet. You pause mid-bite, chewing what might be dried parsnip, and glance around the camp. No shouts, no horns, no fire. Just that faint tremor, subtle enough to make the wooden cup beside you wobble ever so slightly. Then it happens again. Thud. Longer this time. Deeper. Like something large moving far below. The others feel it too now. Heads turn. One man stands and presses his boot against the ground like he's testing a cake. You've heard of this. You hoped it was just legend. But no, they're tunneling. Beneath your feet, counterminers are at work. You're rushed into action. A gruff engineer shoves a pickaxe into your hands and mutters, "Congratulations. You dig now." And just like that, your day shifts from scraping mud off your boots to becoming one of the underground slap fighters of medieval siege warfare. You're escorted to the mining trench, a long, reinforced tunnel that smells of wet rock and centuries-old secrets. The entrance is narrow. You hunch immediately, back pressed against timber beams blackened with soot from pitch torches. The heat is stifling. The air. Stale and thick, like breathing inside a sweaty boot. You grip your pickaxe, glance at the other miners, mud-streaked faces, bloodshot eyes, and silently thank your past self for not skipping breakfast. Down you go. The tunnel snakes downward in a zigzag, deeper than you expected. Dirt shifts beneath your boots. Water drips somewhere ahead. Torchlight flickers against stone walls, casting shadows that dance like goblins waiting to spook you. You pass 3 workers lying still. Not dead, just napping. It's so hot down here, they take shifts collapsing in place. Eventually, you're shown the mine face, the place where the real work happens. It's a cramped, coffin-sized chamber where pickaxes chip at the earth in a rhythm both hypnotic and nerve-jangling. Your job, dig toward the enemy tunnel and intercept it. Why? Because they're trying to dig under your siege lines, hoping to collapse towers or walls. But if you find their tunnel first, you can fight them down there. Yes, underground hand-to-hand combat, lit by flaming torches and fueled by claustrophobia. Fun. You swing your pick. Sparks fly. Dirt crumbles. You cough, wipe your brow, and keep swinging. It's not glamorous. It's not even especially visible. But it's warfare, in its grimiest, most literal form. Sometimes, defenders used bells or bowls of water placed on the ground to detect digging, watching for ripples. Down here, you do it the old-fashioned way, listen. You pause. Ear to the earth. Silence. Then, tap tap tap. Your stomach drops. That's not your team. The tapping is coming from the other side. Closer than anyone expected. You all go still. One man mutters a curse. Another starts sharpening a hand pick. Your torch sputters. The sound of your own breath becomes deafening. You dig faster now. Carefully. Quietly. Suddenly, the wall before you cracks. A sliver of light. Then, a shout, garbled by stone. The enemy's through. The breach bursts open like a popped blister. A face appears, smeared with dirt, eyes wide. Then another. Then fists. Picks. Shovels. There's no room to swing. You lunge. Grab. Punch. Shove. The fighting is desperate, clumsy. You headbutt someone accidentally, or maybe they headbutt you. You both collapse. You roll off and scramble backward, dazed. Someone yells, "Back! Back!" A torch is hurled into the enemy's side of the tunnel. It lands in a puddle, hissing out. Darkness. You retreat, dragging a limping soldier behind you. Your chest heaves. Your face stings. You're sweating in places you didn't know could sweat. The next order comes quickly: collapse the tunnel. You plant pitch-soaked bundles near the breach and retreat. A torch is tossed. Whump. The earth shakes. Dust fills the shaft. You cough, shield your face. Behind you, the tunnel implodes in a muffled roar. The threat, for now, is gone. You emerge from the mine hours later, blinking like a mole. The sunlight stabs your eyes. You're caked in grime. Someone hands you a flask. You don't ask what's in it. You just drink. Later, over supper, you learn that the defenders had begun mining days ago. Your team only intercepted by chance. Apparently, another tunnel to the north might still be active. You groan. Your arms still feel like jelly. Historians still argue whether medieval mining tactics were more about actual destruction or psychological terror. Some cities built counter-tunnels that never even encountered the enemy. Just the idea of being beneath a crumbling wall was often enough to cause panic. One man shares a story, probably fake, about a siege where two miners tunneled into each other, paused, shook hands, and then both fainted from surprise. You laugh weakly. Everything feels distant. Surreal. That night, you dream of being buried alive. Of stone walls closing in. Of whispers in the dark. You wake covered in sweat, clutching your blanket like a lifeline. Outside, the wind has changed. A colder breeze now. Whispering through the tents. And below, somewhere in the deep, the earth remembers every step you took. You're starting to wonder if the people inside the city are having more fun than you. It begins when someone in the trench line shouts, "They've dumped something weird." You grab your helmet, because at this point, it's safer to assume weird means dangerous, and rush to the front. Above, on the parapets, the defenders are unusually active. Buckets are being hauled up and tilted over. Liquid splashes down, steaming where it hits the sun-warmed earth. Boiling oil. Someone guesses. Pitch, says another. Nope. It's sand. Boiling hot sand. The first poor soul to get a direct hit screams and drops his shield. The sand finds every gap in his armor, clinging to skin and melting its way in like angry glitter. It's not fatal, but it will ruin your afternoon. Turns out, defenders had plenty of dirty tricks. You retreat behind the palisade, swearing under your breath. Others are doing the same, brushing sand from sleeves and muttering words that would get them kicked out of any monastery. You didn't think much about life inside the city before. But now that you've been thoroughly seasoned like a medieval rotisserie chicken, your curiosity spikes. You get a shift on scout duty. Basically, your job is to crawl close enough to the wall to observe, without dying. Which is a lot like playing tag on a minefield. You inch forward through shrubs, mud, and questionable smells, belly to the ground, until you can see the top of the wall. And there they are. The defenders. Tired. Dirty. But determined. Some lean on spears. Some snack on something brown and unidentifiable. One's playing a lute badly. Another just stares at the sky. You watch for hours. No one throws anything. It's like they're on break. At one point, a young woman, probably a city militia member, leans over the wall and waves at you. Just a little two-fingered flutter. You blink. She grins, then vanishes behind the battlement. You lie there a few minutes longer, emotionally confused. Back at camp, someone's grumbling about sticky pots. You learn this delightful invention is essentially clay jars filled with burning tar and iron shrapnel. They toss them down when you least expect it. One exploded near the North Tower. The side of the siege engine now looks like it lost a fight with a dragon. Another new joy, greased steps. You're part of a team helping haul a battering ram back into position when someone spots a narrow stone staircase along the wall's side. Someone, probably optimistic, decides to climb it. You watch as he steps onto the third stair and immediately slides backward into a trench, landing face first in a pile of wet hay. The defenders burst into laughter. You can hear it echo from the walls. Someone's been greasing their defenses. These aren't battlefield victories. They're morale stunts. Tiny moments where the defenders remind you they're not just holding on, they're enjoying it. At least, for now. You hear about another nasty trick, false gates. A small wooden door that looks promising, until someone opens it and finds a wall behind it, or worse, a pit. One soldier from your side nearly ran straight into it before someone yelled, "Wrong door." He still claims he would have won if it were real. Then comes the horn. At midnight, with the moon high and the air cold enough to chew, a deep, vibrating note cuts through the silence. One long blast. It rattles your teeth. It sounds like a whale falling in love with a pipe organ. You sit bolt upright, dagger in hand. The horn continues, rising, then falling. Then stopping. No attack follows. No signal. Just, the sound. You lie back down, heart racing. Someone mumbles, "They're just messing with us now." You believe it. The defenders are experts in psychological defense. They're weaponizing annoyance. The next day, the wall is unusually quiet. No sand. No shouting. Just sunlight. And laundry. Again. A new sheet this time. Bright green, fluttering like it's mocking your muddy shirt. You're sent on a short patrol through the outer rubble, scouting for weaknesses. You spot an odd arrangement of stones near the gate. Curved. Patterned. Deliberate. You realize it's a symbol. A sort of crude sigil made from broken tile and pigeon bones. Maybe a religious ward. Maybe a warning. You report it. An officer shrugs and says, "They're trying to spook you." You nod. Because it's working. Back at camp, someone starts carving little figures of the defenders. They're rough, twig bodies with helmet-shaped stones. One figure is made to look like the waving girl. You stare at it for a while. That night, the wind changes. The campfire smoke blows back into the tents. Everyone curses. One soldier says it's a sign. You tell him it's just weather. He says, "You smell like boiled socks," and you agree to disagree. You lie down and stare at the canvas above. You think about the hot sand. The greased steps. The traps. The horn. And the weirdest part. You're starting to respect them. Inside those walls, they're not just surviving. They're improvising. Adapting. Laughing, even. They're showing you that war isn't just strength or strategy. Sometimes, it's about keeping your humor. Even when the world smells like burning tar and everyone's out of clean socks. The trebuchet has lost its will to live. You stare at it now, a massive contraption slouched in the mud like a sulking giant. Its counterweight is crooked. One of the support beams split during the last pull. And someone, probably trying to be helpful, has draped a soaking wet blanket over the sling like it's caught a cold. You are on repair duty. Congratulations. Siege engines, like people, break down in the worst possible ways at the worst possible times. After weeks of use, the cranky saint, as your crew lovingly calls it, has finally earned its breakdown. You squat next to a wheel sunk half a foot into the muck, trying to lever it free with a stick that immediately snaps. The mud slurps at your boots with more affection than most of your friends ever show you. It's going to be a long day. Beside you, the engineer, his hair permanently stuck in the shape of stress, grumbles into a pile of rope. Should have used ash wood, he mutters for the 5th time this hour. Elm warps. You mark my words. No one's arguing. Not because they agree, but because arguing would take energy you no longer possess. Morale is tender. The catapult crew is sulking because they haven't fired anything in days. The tower team lost a wheel axle to termites. And the battering ram has been dragged back behind the latrine after its last attempt nearly collapsed the trench. You're in the dark middle phase now. The part of the siege where everyone slowly loses it. At breakfast, someone tried to eat his own belt. Not as a joke, just to see how far he could get. He got to the second buckle hole before throwing up. The cook added wood ash to the stew for flavor. It did not improve the flavor. You now have a mild cough and an emotional aversion to anything gray. There's talk of desertion. Quiet talk, in back corners, near the latrine trench or under the wagon tarps. A few soldiers just vanish overnight. One left a note that said only, "If I'm going to die in the mud, I'd rather pick my own puddle." Even your friend Joss has stopped yelling about wind direction. He just sits by the palisade now, humming the same 3-note tune over and over. You ask what it is. He shrugs. Might have been a lullaby. Might have been a tavern jingle. Either way, I don't hear screaming when I hum it. Fair. You spend the next 2 hours tightening ropes, replacing bent iron nails with makeshift pins carved from tree roots, and whispering threats at the trebuchet until it starts to hold its shape again. The cranky saint creaks once in protest, then stills. You pat its side. Don't you dare fall apart before tomorrow. By late afternoon, you're called to help patch up a collapsed supply cart. The wheel fell off somewhere between the camp and the forward line, spilling sacks of grain across the mud. Half were already chewed into by rats. The other half now taste like boots. But someone insists on gathering every grain. Historians still argue whether the slow decay of siege logistics was more dangerous than enemy arrows. After all, the longer you sit outside a city, the more your own army becomes the problem. Supplies rot. Tempers fray. Diseases spread like gossip. You've seen 3 different skin rashes this week. One glows in the dark. To boost spirits, the quartermaster organizes a foot race around the perimeter. First prize, a full, unsoggy loaf of bread. No one believes the bread is real, but 20 men run anyway. A boy wins. He refuses to share the prize. His squad nearly mutinies. You admire his courage. Later that night, you help haul firewood, what little remains, to the center of camp. A small bonfire is lit. Not for warmth, but for ritual. Everyone throws something in. A broken spoon. A ruined glove. One man tosses a lice-ridden shirt and lets out a howl of satisfaction as it burns. You drop in a splinter from the old siege tower. It snaps with a pop and sends a little spark skyward. It feels final. Or maybe just petty. Around the fire, stories begin. Old battles. Dumber sieges. Someone swears they once saw a goat chase a knight into a moat. Another describes a city where the defenders surrendered because their bishop had a dream about cheese. You don't know what's true anymore, but the laughter is real enough. In one corner, a quiet psalm begins. Soft. Wordless. A low hum rising over the crackle of flame. Others join in. Not for performance, just something to do with the breath they still have. And for a few minutes, you forget where you are. Forget that your back aches, your socks haven't dried in a month, and your best friend now refers to himself as king of the worms and lives under a tarp. You just listen. When you lie down that night, you think about the trebuchet. About the tools, the repairs, the rope burns on your fingers. You wonder if it'll hold tomorrow. If any of it will. And as your eyes drift shut, you feel the camp quiet again. One more day survived. One more hinge tightened. One more silent vow not to eat your own boots. The mood in camp has shifted. Not because of a major victory. Not because the walls have crumbled or a white flag has fluttered from a tower window. It's because of a whisper. A low, sly rumor slithering between tents, passed around cooking fires and whispered under breath, someone on the inside might open the gate. At first, it sounds ridiculous. Every siege gets this kind of gossip, idle hope dressed in a hood and carrying a dagger. But this one keeps returning. Same phrase. Same names. There's talk of bribery. Apparently, someone's cousin's uncle's half-brother-in-law has a contact inside the city guard. Someone unhappy. Someone hungry. Someone willing to unlock a gate if the price is right. The officers deny it. Loudly. Which only makes people believe it more. You're called in for gatewatch duty tonight, not to storm anything, but just to observe. The gate in question is a narrow servant's entrance, nearly overgrown with ivy and definitely forgotten in the official maps. Which makes it the perfect candidate. You sit behind a screen of bushes, watching it. Hours pass. Fog rolls in. Your boots soak through, again. You hear your own stomach louder than any approaching steps. Then, a flicker. A lantern. Just for a second. Gone again. You freeze. Eyes locked. Hand on dagger hilt. Breath shallow. You wait. And wait. Nothing. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe someone's testing the rumor's reach. Or maybe someone inside the city just wanted to see who came to watch. By sunrise, your limbs are stiff and your bladder is mutinous. You return to camp no wiser, no richer, and no less suspicious. The commanders hold a quiet meeting. You're not invited, obviously, but you hear snippets, coin delivery, confirmed contact, and most ominously, don't spook the asset. Suddenly, things feel different. Sieges are built on stone, strategy, and slow attrition. But they're often won by betrayal. Historians still argue how many medieval cities fell due to bribed gatekeepers versus sheer force. But the stories are there, plenty of them. In one case, a baker reportedly hid soldiers in flour sacks and wheeled them inside. In another, a guard opened a postern gate because he lost a bet and decided to make it someone else's problem. The gate you're watching now. Still locked. Still silent. But there's tension in the air, like the whole army's holding its breath. Back in camp, some soldiers are cleaning themselves. That's how you know something might be about to happen. Shirts are being rinsed. Armor is getting a cursory wipe. One guy even tries to cut his hair with a dagger and ends up bleeding slightly. But he looks marginally more presentable. You're instructed to rest, eat well, and be on alert for a sudden night movement. You stare at your bowl of stew, which is unusually thick tonight, and wonder if this is the last time you'll eat it outside the city walls. Then someone ruins the moment by loudly declaring, "Bet the gate guy chickens out." Everyone nods. Even you. Still, you pack your gear more carefully that evening. Midnight approaches. A soft horn sounds. 3 short notes. You rise. Silent. Alert. Word spreads, go. Quietly. A select team, maybe 30 of you, are sent forward. No siege towers. No trebuchets. No yelling. Just dark cloaks, light steps, and the click of nervous jaws. You reach the wall. The same hidden gate. It's open. Only a sliver. But unmistakably, undeniably open. A single candle burns just inside the threshold. A signal. A risk. An invitation. The captain signals halt. You wait in tense silence. Every heartbeat feels like a drum solo. Then, movement. A guard appears. Hooded. Slim. Holding a key ring. He nods once. Tosses the keys toward your captain, then vanishes back into the shadow. Someone whispers, "It's real." The gate opens wider. And then you hear it, a distant voice yelling something. Angry. A second shout follows. Louder. The signal's been spotted. The alarm's been raised. Go. The captain waves you forward, and suddenly you're moving, charging low, silent no longer, boots thudding into the stone floor of the passageway. You're inside. Not all the way, just past the threshold. Enough to see the interior wall. Enough to see the chaos. Torches flare. Bells ring. But too late. Half your team's through. You clash with a few panicked defenders. Most flee. A few fight half-heartedly, caught off guard and outnumbered. You push forward, clearing the chamber. The outer courtyard looms beyond, empty, save for barrels and a stack of wood meant for firewood or fortification. Then comes the retreat signal. You obey. For now, it was just a test. A partial breach. A message. We can get in. You sprint back out as more horns blare and enemy archers fill the towers. Arrows whistle past as you duck and slide into the dark. By the time you return to camp, your heart's racing and your ears are ringing. And the gate? It's locked again. But not forgotten. The rumor was true. There is someone on the inside. And now, everyone knows it. It's amazing how quickly confidence evaporates when the weather decides to hate you. You wake to thunder, a long, bone-deep groan from the sky, followed by a crack of lightning that sends half the tent row swearing into their boots. Rain begins almost immediately. Not a polite drizzle. Not a dramatic downpour. Something worse. Siege rain. Siege rain doesn't just fall. It seeps. It slides down the back of your neck and soaks into your rations. It turns every trench into a canal and every bedroll into a sponge. Within minutes, the camp smells like moldy wool and old fish. You climb out of your tent, which now resembles a sagging fruit tart, and immediately step into a puddle deeper than your ankle. Your boot squelches. You pretend you didn't just lose half your sock. Around you, the camp is unraveling. Tents collapse under the weight of wet fabric. Wagons tip in the mud. Fires sputter, hiss, and die with little dramatic flair, as if they know it's not worth the fight. You reach the siege lines to find your beloved trebuchet, cranky saint, may she rest, half submerged in muck. One wheel is gone. Just gone. Probably sunk to the center of the earth. The engineer looks at it, sighs, and says, "It's officially a raft now." Siege warfare and weather have never gotten along. Historians still argue whether some famous sieges failed due to enemy resistance or just aggressive climate conditions. Mud killed more dreams than arrows ever did. You help haul buckets of water out of the ditch, a task that is about as productive as bailing out a sinking ship with a spoon. Your hands are pruning. Your socks are biologically evolving into independent life forms. Every step you take sounds like a wet slap. The ladders. Slippery. The battering ram. Too waterlogged to swing properly. The ropes. Snapping like old twine. You attempt to pull one taut and it disintegrates in your hands like it was made of damp noodles. The clay-packed earthen walls supporting the trenches begin to collapse in slow motion. A muddy landslide takes out 3 shovels and 1 sleeping soldier, who re-emerges looking confused and deeply betrayed. And the best part? It just keeps raining. Your dinner is a bowl of broth with actual raindrops in it. The cook gives up halfway through and just starts handing out turnips. Raw. Inside the city, however, torches still burn. Somehow their fires stay lit. The walls glisten, but they hold. They're probably warmer in there. Drier. Eating something hot. Laughing at the soaked invaders trying to wage war with soggy boots and trench foot. You spend the night bailing water out of your tent using your helmet. Halfway through, a man from the next row over declares he's giving up and just becoming a frog. He jumps 3 times and lies in the mud. No one stops him. Then the wind picks up. The rain slants sideways now. Your cloak flaps like a flag in protest. You huddle under what remains of the tarp roof with 3 others, trying not to shiver audibly. Suddenly, a support post cracks. One of the siege towers lists sharply to the left, groans like a dying whale, and then collapses. Right into a latrine trench. The splash is unspeakable. You stare in silence for a full minute. One of the archers whispers, "Well, that's symbolic." The next morning, the camp looks like an abandoned fish market. Everything stinks. Everything is gray. The rats look healthier than most of the soldiers. You attempt to dry your clothes by standing near a fire pit, but the flames are mostly smoke and lies. One commander tries to rally spirits with a speech. He stands on a crate, soaked, muddy, his armor streaked like a sad tin can, and bellows, "Hold the line." The crate collapses. He disappears with a shriek and a splash. The silence afterward is polite. You start to wonder what the defenders think of you now. Through their arrow slits and watchtowers, they've watched your once mighty siege camp become a soup of sadness. And you? You haven't had a dry foot in 3 days. Your blanket smells like fish. And your shoes squish when you walk, even when you're not walking. One man insists that if the rain continues another week, the whole siege will dissolve. Literally. Melt into the swamp like a forgotten pastry. At this point, you're willing to believe it. By evening, the rain lightens, just a bit. Enough to see the city walls again. Enough to patch the worst of the tent damage. Enough to start boiling something vaguely edible. You sit on an upturned crate, soaked to your soul, holding a piece of dry bread like it's a family heirloom. Joss walks by, dripping. He points at the half-sunken trebuchet and says, "She always hated us." You nod. And then he adds, "Still better than marching." And somehow, he's right. Because even soaked, even frozen, even covered in whatever that was from the trench, you're still here. Still in the mud. Still under the walls. Still waiting. The siege isn't over. Just, soggy. The horn blows at dawn. A sharp, final blast that slices through the fog like a blade. You jolt awake with your face pressed into wet canvas, half convinced it's another drill, or a dream, or some poor idiot practicing trumpet again. But no. This one's real. You throw off your soaked blanket, grab your helmet, and run, because the signal that just screamed across the camp means one thing only. The breach is open. You arrive at the forward line just in time to see it, there in the distance, at the southern wall. A gaping hole in the stone, smoke still curling from its edges. Rubble spills outward like broken teeth. Archers are firing from both sides. The gate isn't open. The wall is gone. The sappers did it. Or maybe it was the last trebuchet shot from Cranky Saint before she died in a puddle. Or maybe someone finally bribed the right stone. Historians still argue whether this kind of breach usually came from undermining, bombardment, or plain divine exhaustion. But you're not here for theory. You're here to run toward the hole and hope you make it through. Commanders shout orders. Banners lift. The first wave surges forward, mostly veterans, poor fools. Their boots splash through trenches and up embankments, across the field now littered with broken ladders, wet helmets, and discarded plans. You're part of the second wave. You jog forward with your shield up, sword drawn, lungs already burning from anticipation and old stew fumes. You trip once, on a wheel, of all things, and nearly fall into a shallow crater full of bones. You don't stop to ask whose. Then you reach the breach. It's bigger up close. Not just a hole, but a ruin, a jagged wound through which smoke, dust, and desperation pour. The stone beneath your feet is slick. You slip, catch yourself on someone else's shoulder, and press forward. The entrance narrows, bodies jammed into the gap, screaming, fighting, pushing. You wait your turn like it's a cue for disaster. A man ahead slips on a piece of rubble and vanishes under the boots of the next three. You step over his leg and keep moving. Your first step inside is chaos. The defenders have rigged the interior with barriers, low walls, overturned wagons, spiked boards. You clamber over one just in time to be met by a spear jab that misses your face by inches. You counter, swing wide, and manage to clip someone's helmet. Sparks fly. Screams echo. Then you see it. The mud. Inside the breach, the ground is thick with it. Mixed with blood. And bodies. And, is that a piece of a dining chair? You skid, plant your feet, and push. The fight becomes a tug-of-war of limbs and willpower. 1 minute you're standing, the next you're on one knee, stabbing upward at someone whose expression is equal parts rage and panic. You lock eyes with a defender, a boy, maybe 15, with a sword too big for him. He hesitates. You shove past. No one has time for moral crises right now. Beside you, someone slips on a corpse. You're not sure if he survives. You're not sure if you want to check. Every step is earned. Every breath is risk. A horn sounds behind you, third wave incoming. You don't look back. No time. You duck into a side alley between two blackened buildings, trying to find better footing. And then you're hit. Not by a weapon. By a bucket of something slippery, oil, maybe. You crash to the ground and scramble backward just in time to avoid a falling beam. It lands beside you with a crack, splinters flying. Defenders are fighting from rooftops now. Throwing down bricks, bottles, anything heavy. One man chucks a chamber pot. It lands with tragic accuracy. You see a siege mate, one of your tent buddies, kneeling with an arrow in his thigh, trying to reload a crossbow with his teeth. You kneel beside him, wrench the bolt back, and hand it to him. He laughs. Was hoping you'd bring a sandwich. You don't. You do hand him a rock. It seems symbolic. Then the horn again. The final call. This is the push. You charge forward, slipping through a half-burned doorway into what might have once been a bakery. There are still loaves on the counter, stale, dust-covered. You briefly think about taking one, then remember you're actively being stabbed. Another wall. Another push. You duck, weave, scream. Your blade locks with another. For a moment, it's just you and them, chest to chest, teeth bared. Then their footing falters and you shove them back into the mud. You look down. They're already gone. The breach widens with every passing minute. The defenders are retreating, slowly, stubbornly, but it's happening. You make it to the courtyard. It's quiet here. Quieter than it should be. A fountain trickles. It's cracked, stained. But still running. You rest one hand on the rim. Breathe. Let the silence settle over you like a burial cloth. And then, from behind a doorway, movement. You raise your weapon. It's a dog. A skinny, mud-caked mutt with a limp and a rawhide scrap in its mouth. It stares at you for a moment, then trots away, unimpressed. You lower your sword. And then the rest of the soldiers pour in, boots splashing through the muck, banners waving, cries echoing against stone. The defenders vanish deeper into the city. You've breached the walls. But this siege? It's not done yet. Not by a long shot. Now comes the hard part, taking the city one muddy, blood-slicked step at a time. The city is yours. Or, more precisely, it's not theirs anymore. You stand in the central square, knees aching, sword dangling from your fingertips like a tired branch. The courtyard is scattered with debris, broken carts, shattered shields, and discarded shoes that clearly belonged to better days. Smoke drifts from rooftops. Bells toll somewhere, not in celebration, but like they're ringing to mourn themselves. The defenders have either fled, surrendered, or been trampled in the surge. You've made it in. And now you stand there, blinking. Because no one knows what to do next. Sieges are all about waiting, building, pushing. They're linear, even in their chaos. But victory? That's abstract. Slippery. Loud and quiet at the same time. And after all that fire, all those screams, all that tension wound tight around your spine for weeks. It ends with a slow, confused shuffle into the city streets. There's no trumpet. No triumphant march. Just the sound of squelching boots on stone and someone muttering, "So, do we loot now?" You pass through alleys that smell of soot and garlic. Doors hang crooked on their hinges. Laundry is still strung between buildings, like the siege forgot to mention it was happening. A cat runs across your path carrying something that might be a sausage or a rat. You hope it's the former. Then the fires begin. Not set by the defenders. No. Your own side. Opportunists with torches, soldiers drunk on adrenaline and stolen wine. Someone sets a bakery alight, laughing. Another throws a chair out a window. Soon, orange flickers paint the city walls again. Not the glow of trebuchet flame, but celebratory chaos. You step around a body in the street. It isn't armored. Just, someone. Civilians didn't fight in the breach. But they lived here. You try not to think about that. Someone nearby kicks in a door and shouts, "We found the wine." Of course they did. You wander toward the main thoroughfare. Statues line the path, weathered kings, headless angels, a knight mid-charge frozen in stone. One now wears your comrade's cloak like a festive scarf. The looting has begun in earnest. Barrels are broken. Inns are ransacked. Someone rolls a wardrobe into the square, opens it, and reveals, absolutely nothing. They throw it into a well in frustration. The splash echoes far longer than it should. Looting is technically allowed, a soldier's reward. That's how commanders justify the months of trench digging, blood loss, and sleeping in blankets that smell like old goats. You're not sure you believe in that reward anymore. You pass a tailor's shop. The door's ajar. Bolts of cloth lie trampled. A perfectly intact cloak catches your eye, deep green, stitched with golden thread. You almost take it. Then you remember the tailor might be lying behind the counter. You keep walking. In one siege from history, it said that soldiers looted so efficiently they stole the city's water buckets. Then the city caught fire and, well, not ideal. Historians still debate whether looting helped or hurt morale. In theory, it rewarded the army. In practice, it sometimes sparked mutiny. Or guilt. Or worse, boredom after the adrenaline faded. You turn into a narrow alley and find a group of your own men sitting beside a smashed wine barrel, already half asleep. One of them mumbles, "We won, right?" You nod. He closes his eyes. Just checking. As the day wears on, the city becomes a half-living skeleton. Smoke trails rise like morning veils. Church bells ring no longer. A dog barks. Somewhere, someone plays a flute badly. You enter the small chapel near the city square, drawn by the quiet. Inside, cracked stained glass, a toppled candelabra, and two old people sitting on a bench, hands clasped, staring straight ahead. You don't speak. They don't look at you. You back out, gently, quietly. By nightfall, the fire is spreading. No one planned it. No one stopped it. It just caught. A curtain. A cart. A wooden arch. You and two others form a rough bucket line to stop the blaze from reaching the quartermaster's new storage tent. Your hands blister, and the effort feels oddly peaceful compared to everything that came before. Then someone suggests you stop. Let it burn, they say. It's not our city. You don't answer. Instead, you go sit in what's left of a courtyard. Charred barrels. Bits of bread. A flower pot somehow still intact. You pick it up. There's a single tulip, blackened at the edges, still standing tall. You place it in the mud and walk away. By now, the looting has slowed. People are tired. Some are ashamed. Some aren't. A soldier stumbles past you with 3 chairs tied to his back. He says nothing. Just keeps walking. The command tent is set up outside the city walls. Some officers have already returned, mumbling about order, rebuilding, and future use of this site. You stare back at the city. It's taken. It's yours. But it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like being lost somewhere new. Morning arrives late, slow, and deeply hungover. The city still smolders in places, little fingers of smoke curling from rooftops and broken windows. It smells like ash, sweat, and cheap wine. You wake under a cart you don't remember falling asleep beneath, with a chicken pecking near your boot and your mouth tasting like someone boiled socks in vinegar. But congratulations. You've made it to the victory feast. Or at least, what passes for one. The main square is a mess of overturned furniture and improvised tables. Soldiers sit on crates and broken doors. Food appears, some scavenged, some cooked in former kitchens, some very questionable. The bread is hot, if slightly burnt. The wine is plentiful, if definitely stolen. Someone roasts a pig over an open fire using a spit made from a broken pike. Where they found the pig, no one knows. Possibly a mascot. Possibly a bribe from one of the remaining townsfolk. You eat with greasy fingers and laugh at nothing. Every joke is funnier when you've barely slept and may or may not be concussed. This is the part of the siege no one trains for, what happens after. You've survived the starvation, the storms, the sabotage, the sewage-adjacent stew. You fought your way through rubble and slipped on more intestines than you'd like to count. And now, you're supposed to celebrate. You try. Truly. You toast with muddy ale and swap stories with your squad mates. Someone sings. Loudly. And badly. Joss joins in with his own lyrics that seem to involve livestock and a monk's daughter. You clap anyway. But underneath the joy, you can feel it. The sickness. Not metaphorical. Very literal. It started last night. Someone vomiting near the old well. Then another. And another. Soon the word is whispered like a curse, fever. You see it now, sweaty brows, hollow eyes, a few folks already lying down mid-meal. One man falls asleep while chewing. It's not surprising. Sieges are disease factories. Contaminated water. Rotting food. Filthy wounds. Close quarters. All the ingredients of a particularly medieval disaster pie. You're not panicked yet. But you drink cautiously. You sniff your wine. You avoid the cold meat. You quietly step over the puddle behind the bakery where someone passed out during a toast. Historians still argue whether more soldiers died after sieges than during them. Typhus, dysentery, and camp fever could spread like rumors in a tavern. And now it's your turn to roll the dice. Your own stomach is, fine. Sort of. There's a gurgle. But maybe that's just digestion. Or fear. You bite into another piece of flatbread and chew slowly, very aware of your fate possibly resting on the freshness of this particular loaf. Later, a medic walks through the square. He's not official. Just a guy with a bucket of herbs and a stick who shouts things like "Don't drink the blue water." And if your nose bleeds, sit upside down. You appreciate the effort. Someone next to you starts counting how many people they recognize and how many they don't see anymore. You stop them halfway through. The feasting continues into the evening, but with less energy. Fewer songs. More awkward silences between mouthfuls. A slow realization settling over the victors that celebration doesn't clean blood off the stones. Some soldiers start packing. Not out of duty, just instinct. It's time to move. This place, conquered though it is, already feels cursed. Others don't want to leave. They talk about rebuilding. Staying. Turning this broken city into something livable again. You nod along but don't say what you're thinking. You're thinking, I don't want to die here with my boots still muddy and my teeth aching from bad bread. Night falls with no torches lit. Everyone's too tired. Fires burn low. People sleep in armor. Or wrapped in carpets looted from mansions that now have no roofs. You lie beneath a balcony, watching the stars, which for once aren't obscured by smoke or screaming. The wind shifts. Brings the scent of rosemary from someone's abandoned garden. And something else, the sharp tang of sickness carried on breath and hope. You close your eyes and try not to listen. In your dream, you're back at the outer walls. But now, instead of attacking, you're building. Raising bricks. Planting trees. Cleaning stone. You wake with your hands still curled as if holding a trowel. The next morning, the first burial pyres begin. Quiet. Respectful. Just enough to say, we noticed. We'll remember. You stand by one, not sure who's being burned, but knowing you've seen that helmet before. You nod once. Then walk away. You'll be moving on soon. Orders will come. Another campaign. Another field. Another city that probably thinks it can outlast you. But for now, you drink one last cup of something warm, sit on the city wall with Joss, and look out at the rising sun. And neither of you says a word. The city gates are open now, not breached, not forced, just open. Swung wide like a pair of tired arms finally lowering after holding the weight of war too long. You walk through them in silence, trailing the rest of the army as it prepares to move on. There's no grand send-off. No ceremony. Just the steady crunch of boots on gravel and the rustle of bags being strapped to carts. Somewhere, a wheel squeaks. No one bothers to fix it. You glance back once. The city looks smaller from this angle. Quieter. Less monstrous. The smoke has cleared, mostly. The fires are out. A few townsfolk peer cautiously from alleyways. Some sweep. Some pray. One kid throws a rock into a fountain and laughs, like the siege never happened. And just like that, you realize, the war didn't end here. It just changed shape. Because siege warfare doesn't ever fully leave. It lingers. In the cracked walls. In the abandoned homes. In the burned-out eyes of those who lived through it, and those who didn't. Your boots are still caked in that same city mud. Even after walking half a mile past the walls, it clings, dried and flaking in little reminders. You could scrape it off, but a part of you doesn't want to. It's proof. A souvenir. A scar. A rider passes by at a trot. He's whistling. You don't recognize the tune. It might be new. Or old enough to have forgotten its original meaning. That's what warfare does, blurs lines. Between building and breaking. Between enemy and neighbor. Between one siege and the next. Historians point to this era, the twilight of medieval siege tactics, as the turning point. Gunpowder was creeping into the picture now. Cannons, black powder, and stone-cracking thunder. A single blast doing what once took months of digging, launching, starving. But even as cannonballs replaced catapults, the soul of the siege remained. Starvation, patience, noise, and fear. They just came faster now. Louder. With smoke and fire and metal. You walk alongside Joss, who hasn't said a word all morning. At one point, he finally mutters, "No more mud, please." Then promptly steps into a puddle. You both laugh, too tired to care how bitter the sound is. Siege warfare might fade from the manuals. From the castles and training yards. But it lives on in strategy, in spirit. In every trench ever dug since. In every wall ever stormed. In every soldier who's had to wait, hungry and cold, while staring at an enemy that wouldn't blink first. As the army stretches out across the fields, you fall into a quiet rhythm. Step. Step. Breathe. Shift weight. Ignore the ache. Ahead, a new horizon waits. Maybe a village. Maybe another city. Maybe peace. You don't know yet. But you do know this. You're not the same person who arrived at the gates of that city weeks ago with a shovel, a spear, and a vague idea of glory. You're something different now. A little harder. A little wiser. A little more likely to carry dry socks. And when someone one day asks you what it was like, you'll smile, maybe. Then shrug. It was loud, you'll say. And long. And muddy. And they'll probably laugh. But you'll remember the trench. The skulls. The rain. The songs. The cat. You'll remember every moment that made you wonder if you'd survive. And every quiet second that reminded you how badly you wanted to. The sky softens above you now, pale blue giving way to gentle gold as evening tiptoes across the hills. The road stretches ahead, quiet, forgiving. There's no shouting. No drums. Just the soft whisper of your footsteps, the faint clink of gear, and the occasional bird cutting through the hush. You breathe deeper. The weight on your shoulders feels lighter, even if the pack's just as full. The aches are still there, but they've softened, too. Less a pain, more a memory. Behind you, the city fades into distance and dusk. Its towers no longer loom. Its walls no longer threaten. The siege, for all its noise and fury, has folded into a smaller place, somewhere tucked behind your ribs, folded carefully, like a map you might someday unfold again, or never. The trees sway gently. The air smells of distant rain and crushed leaves. Every step forward feels easier, as if the ground itself is giving thanks for the quiet. You roll your shoulders. Let your eyes close for a moment. There's no battle to brace for. No orders to wait on. No horn waiting to split the sky. Just the slow rhythm of your breath. The slow blink of stars rising, one by one. And the peace that finally holds. Sleep now. The walls are behind you. The road is soft. And nothing's chasing you anymore.